Hi everyone, this video is around authentication, specifically some foundation for authentication. How do you use cookies to do authentication? What even are cookies? We learn about this thing called CSRF attacks, if you've heard of them, CSRF attacks. We learn about how you can connect a React app and an Express app using cookies and not local storage. Some more properties of cookies. The reason cookies become very important is because when we reach Next.js, you sort of have to use cookies for authentication. You cannot use local storage plus JWT, the thing that we've been using for a while. I'll get to why that is. But generally, before we reach next auth, I wanted to do a basic foundation of authentication using cookies, and that's what this video is going to be. Let's get right into it. Hopefully, you understand by now what authentication is. It's basically this page, right, where you can come, sign in with email, sign in with GitHub, Google, so on and so forth, and you get access to a website. Whenever you log out, you get logged out, and all your routes are sort of protected. If you're logged in as a user, you only get your own information. You don't get a different user's information. Very similar to the Paytm project where we let a user sign up, create a wallet balance, and then transfer money to someone else. You could not see other people's balances. You could see your own balance. Whenever you transferred, money went from your own balance. That's what authentication is. Very important. Most websites will need authentication. Daily Code also has authentication. App.redxdev has authentication. Facebook has authentication. Google has authentication. Very common concept. Question is, how do you do it right? And this is not the right way. This is, cookies are, no one uses cookies, especially, fundamentally like we are doing right now. But they're good to know. That's what this foundation class is going to be about. Before we get into cookie-based authentication, let's rewind the clock and understand a little bit about JWT plus local storage based authentication. We did this many times, so I'm hoping this is just a very nice revision of how authentication works using JWT plus local storage. The first thing you do when you reach, let's say, a sign up page like facebook.com is that you fill out a form with a few details, and after you do, you click on the sign up button. What happens under the hood when you click on the sign up button? We have done this already in the Paytm project. But to quickly revise, you send out a request to an endpoint like this, API/v1/signup. You send your username and password, maybe 10 different things, your first name, last name, date of birth. It reaches your backend server, and that entry goes into a database, provided there is no other user with that email already. The other thing that happens usually is there will be an email that goes out to your specific email, and you need to verify this email. Only then does this verified entry become true in the database. When you go to this UI and sign up, the entry is made in a database. You have an email and a password. The password is hashed. We've done a little bit of hash passwording. I don't know if I've taught hashed password, but they're very easy to add. I recently added it in this PR. So if you want to understand how hashed passwords, how you can hash passwords, this updated auth PR will show you how you can use the bcrypt library to do it. Just going to leave it here in case you want to join, in case you want to figure out how to do hashing of passwords yourself. I'll also cover it in a different video. Verified is set to false initially. Whenever you go to your email, click on a verification link is when this verified becomes true. In 1 to 100, we'll also look at how you can send emails, and then we'll figure out how you can, make sure no one else can hijack someone else's email. Why do you need this sending email verification flow? Because I can just go here and say, bhai, my, when I'm signing up, I can say my number is, or my email is mark@facebook.com or whatever, zuck@facebook.com. To make sure I cannot hijack his email's identity, you need to verify this. So you send a link to their email that actually verifies that this user is actually the owner of this email, and then this entry becomes true. We'll cover this later, but high level, this is how the sign up request should go. How did we do? We did not do any verification. Everything else was straightforward. You send an entry. There was no verified column, but you would put an entry in the database. Tell the user you're good to go. You've been signed up. How did we do sign in when we were using JWTs plus local storage? The user would send a sign in request from probably a page that looks something like this. An email field and a password field. You click on login. A request goes out. The server checks if the password is right. Server checks if the user is already verified. It checks both of these things. Okay? Is the password right? is the user verified? If they're not yet verified, if this is false, you should probably say true here in the diagram. But if this is false, then you tell the user below, please verify your email. You probably give them an option here on the front end to resend email, and then you have another endpoint from which they can resend a verification email. But if assuming there's no verification emails in the process, you send a request, the user sends a request. If everything is right, you return them the JWT token, which they store in the browser's local storage. Now that they have this token, all they have to do is send this token in every subsequent request, specifically the requests that require authentication. For example, if they want to check their details, ki bhai, what is my first name in the backend, what is my last name. For an application like Facebook, if they want to see their feed, whenever they're sending a request, they will send this authorization header along. Okay, bhai, this is the token I have. Please decode it and verify that this is Harkirat and give me my details. Give me my user details in this case. But in the future, you might require your posts, everything. Every request that needs to be authenticated, you explicitly send this header. This is how we did authentication up until the Paytm project. Now we're understanding how to do authentication using cookies. Before that, we need to understand what are cookies and how are they different from local storage? How are they different from JWT? Let's read through it. Cookies in web development are small pieces of data sent from a website and stored on the user's computer by the user's web browser while the user is browsing. Oh, too many things. It's like local storage. If I inspect, click on application, you'll see just like I have local storage here, I have cookies. I'm not going to click on it, else you'll be able to log in as me on this website, which I don't want. But if you click on it, you'll see all of your cookies, very similar to if you click on local storage, you see your JWT token for that website. So it's something that's sent by the server and somehow automatically stored here. You don't have to do a local storage.store. It automatically gets put in your browser. Browser understands, okay, bhai, if the server is sending me a cookie, I will store it. Why do you use local storage? Why do you use cookies? Bunch of things. Even local storage can be used for a bunch of things. For example, session management. Cookies allow websites to identify users and track their individual state across multiple pages or visits. So this is sort of related to ads. If you ever go to, I don't know, whatever, carpet. There you go. If I ever go to buy carpet and open this IKEA website, now after some time I'll begin to see ads. In fact, you can see here, you are in control of your cookies. It's over here only telling you, bhai, are you okay with us setting some cookies so we can show you ads eventually? So one of the biggest places cookies are used is for cross-site tracking, which is actually the third point, but very closely related to the first point as well. Okay, bhai, if you go to a website, Facebook knows, Google knows you visited this website, and they'll show you personalized ads. Personalization. Website cookies also used to store personalization for ads. For instance, cookies might store information about users' preferences, allowing the site to tailor the content according to these interests. If you ever set a preference of, I don't want to see, shady ads on a specific topic, it will get stored in your cookies. The most important one, tracking, is again the same. You can track them across websites. If they go to Furlenco, Google knows, okay, you went to Furlenco, and it will show you some ads related to Furlenco. Security is another reason you might want to use cookies, and this is the one that we are going to use it for. Secure cookies can be used to enhance the security of website by ensuring that transmission of information is only done. Well, this point isn't written very well. But by security, I mean authentication. I'll probably change this by the time the slide is uploaded. Authentication means you get some sort of a token from the backend. You store it in your local storage, and then every subsequent request, you send that cookie so that you're authenticated with the backend. We'll be focusing on point number 4, कि भाई authentication. Rather than going through the whole, if this is the server client, browser, and this is the server, when the user signs in, we will not send them back a JWT. We will set a cookie on their browser. Okay, bhai, there you go. This is your token, and then the user will send us back the cookie in every subsequent request. This is how we are changing the flow of authentication when using cookies for authentication. Can you use cookies for other things? Yes. But we are going to use it for authentication. Why not local storage? Harkirat, this is a solved problem. We have already done this. Why? What is the difference even? It's fine if you store it in local storage. If you get back a token stored in local storage, send it back rather than storing it in a cookie. What is the benefit of storing it in a cookie? The biggest benefit is that you can't even do this in Next.js, like do local storage in Next.js. I'll come to why that is, but let me give you a brief of why you cannot do this in Next.js. If I go to any Next.js application, if I go to app.100xdevs.com, which is a Next.js application, the first request that goes out to app.100xdevs.com, can you ever put the authorization header there? Can you ever get the thing from local storage and put it here? No, this request was sent from the browser. You cannot be like, "Arey bro, when I'm going to the top level page, please send something from the local storage into the authorization header." You cannot do this. You cannot do, okay, bhai, you're not doing an axios.post call. The browser is sending the first request. And when this browser sends the first request, it cannot explicitly send a header, especially the header, that's somewhere embedded in local storage. You can send subsequent requests like this and pass in the authorization header from the local storage, but it won't send it by default, at least in the first request. And what does Next.js do? Next.js does something called server-side rendering, which basically means that by the very first request that comes from the browser, app.100xdevs.com, has the user's data. In this case, it has my purchases. Okay, bhai, I have purchased this and this. It's already rendered on the server and returned back. And if this request does not have the authorization header, how will the server know who it is? In React, this is not a problem. In React, what do you do? In React, you're like, bro, this is my browser. First, I will get the front-end bundle from somewhere, usually from a CDN like Cloudflare. And it doesn't matter if I'm not sending a local storage here. If this is app.100xdevs.com, it does not matter if I'm not sending the authorization header here, because I'm just getting back a bunch of JavaScript files which are same for everyone. I'm just getting back a bunch of JS HTML files, and this is the same for everyone. Eventually, I send a request to a backend server to get back my purchases. This is client-side rendering. Okay, by first give me the bundle, the JavaScript HTML bundle, then I will send the request. And when I am sending the subsequent request, I can always be like, bro, this is how I will send request. I'll do an axios.post with the amount. Hence, in this case, it doesn't matter. In the case of React, local storage works. You can take the cookie from the local, you can take the token from the local storage and send it to the backend server. But can you do the same in React? You can do it for subsequent requests, but for the first pre-rendered request that's going to app.100xdevs.com, if you don't send, you cannot send the authorization header, and hence the server doesn't know who you are, which is why you need to send a cookie, because cookies can be sent from the first page as well. If I go to app.100xdevs.com and click on inspect and go to application, go to network, let me refresh this page. If I go to app.100xdevs.com, you will see it has no authorization header. If I look at the request cookies, it has no authorization header. I was not able to even, I cannot be like, bro, app.100xdevs.com and also do send a local storage.get item token along with this in the authorization header. I cannot write something like this in the browser, right? The very first request that's going out, I cannot do any programmatic logic on it. I can do it here. I cannot do it there, which is why, can you guys see me? This a little bit you can see, okay. The cookie though is sent by default. One big property of cookies is, okay, bhai, once the server sets the cookies, as the previous diagram, once the server sets the cookies, let's go to the next slide. Let's ignore sign up. When you're signing in using cookies, You send the request, server does all the checks it needs to. It returns you a header that says, bro, set cookie token equal to JWT. It basically tells the browser, okay, bhai, I'm giving you a cookie, please set it. And browsers have this property, okay, if a cookie is set on a website, they will send it in every request. You don't have to do this. You don't have to keep attaching it to the headers. It will by default send it, which is why if you go to app.100xsteps.com and look at any request that's going out, if you look at this request, there is a cookie that goes out in the, even in the top level request, the front end request also this cookie goes out, which is how the server identifies that this is Harkirat who's trying to, access these courses, and it is able to get my courses on the server and return me the pre-rendered page. You cannot do that in React. In React, you first get back the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, then you programmatically send the authorization header again and again to get user-specific data. But if you want user-specific data in the very first request, you need to use cookies. This is why one of the biggest use cases of cookies is, compared to local storage, is it won't work in a server-side rendered application. You cannot use local storage plus authorization header in server-side rendered applications. You have to use cookies because cookies browser sends by default. You don't have to do any programmatic logic to send it. You tell it this is a cookie you need to send, it will send until you log out. When you log out, you clear the cookie. So this is how the sign-up request will pretty much look the same, but the sign-in request, when you was doing login using cookies, is why the response that you get back will have this set cookie header. In fact, let me log out from here and try to log back in using my credentials. And let me show you the request that goes out. But more importantly, let me show you the, where is it? The response that comes back, and does it have a set cookie response header? Headers you can send from the client to the server. Server can also respond back with response headers. So if I go back here and click on login, you will see the request that went out, which had, my credentials. If I click here, it will show the credentials. I don't want to. But if you look at the response headers, it does not have set cookie. Let's look at the next one. Does not have set cookie. Look at the next one. There you go. The third request that goes out, something happens. The final request that goes out gets back from the server a set cookie attribute, a set cookie header. Okay, bhai, browser, please set this in your cookies section, so that when that happens, browser will send it back in every request. Iske baad, if I go to app.100xsteps.com, whatever was in that set cookie header is now going in every subsequent request to the server. So after sign-in is done and you get back this set cookie and the browser sets it, the browser sets it. You don't have to do a local storage.set. Browser automatically knows if this header is coming back from the server, I need to set it in the cookies. And now every request that's going out is sending my cookie along. Even the top level requests, even the request to app.100xsteps.com. And I don't have to explicitly, attach local storage this headers authorization local storage. This is the benefit of using cookies. There are a bunch of other benefits, which is, you can attach an expiry to them. Bro, expire after 24 hours. You can restrict them in certain ways. Bro, you will only work on HTTPS, not work on HTTP. You will only work on certain domains, and we'll come to this when we reach the CSRF or CSRF attacks section. But there are like a bunch of things that cookies let you do that you can do in local in local storage plus tokens as well. You can attach an expiry somehow, but cookies sort of give you all of these constructs out of the box. I'll share what this means when we reach the code. Cool. This is how authentication with cookies works. Slightly different from authentication with local storage. The biggest difference is the server just needs to send back a header that says set cookie, please set this cookie, browser, and store it on your side. And then every subsequent request, the browser will send over the cookie with the request. Even the requests that don't need auth, it will just keep pushing it because you're not explicitly putting it. Every request that goes out from the browser to the same server, the cookie will be sent out. I'm receiving a call, so I'll be back in a second. All right, in this slide, let's go through some properties of cookies and various types of cookies, how they are different from rolling your own authentication if you use local storage plus JWT. And then we'll understand a bit about CSRF attacks, the things that I shared can become an attack vector when you're using cookies, but how can you get rid of them? There are usually, two types of cookies, I say. Persistent cookies, which even if you close the website and then come back to the website, they stay. So your authentication cookies should probably be persistent. You don't want that the user closed the website, went back, and then they got logged out. They have to re-log in. So authentication cookies probably should be persistent. And session cookies, as the name suggests, will only stay for a session. As soon as you close that browser, they go away. What's a good use case of this? Whatever preference of a user you want to persist across just one session, you can use these cookies for. I can't think of a good example on when you might want to use them. For authentication, you will use persistent cookies. You want the server sent it to you. There is a 1 day expiry. For the next 1 day, stay persistent. Even if the user restarts their machine, the cookie should still be there. This is not a type, this is just a property, this should probably be here. But secure cookies, if you set your cookie as secure whenever you're setting it on the server, it will only be sent over HTTPS. If you're on an HTTP website, cookie won't be sent. These are the things that cookies sort of let you do out of the box. Versus if you're doing this in, your own authentication using JWT plus local storage, you'll have to write all of this logic, check whether or not the request came from a secure source. Here, cookies, you just set secure as true or secure as false based on whether or not you want this cookie to be sent over a insecure request, insecure host. Properties of cookies. HTTP only. This is a sort of an important property. Cannot be accessed by the client side scripts. Basically, what is happening? When you're sending back a cookie to the client, it's getting stored over here, right? Application/cookies. A lot of times you want them to be HTTP only. Okay, bhai, I'm setting it on the browser, but don't let anyone do, cookies.get token and get that specific token. Local storage doesn't have this property. Anyone can do, a client-side script can do local storage.get whatever. You cannot do the same thing with cookies if you are using HTTP only. HTTP only means, bro, use this for transmission. Do not allow client-side scripts, which means client-side JavaScript, to access these cookies. Just a security measure. Okay, by any chance, if there is some injection over here and some external website is able to run some code, they shouldn't be able to do a cookies.get in any way possible. Cookies should not be accessible to whoever is writing JavaScript code, be it the developer of the website or someone else. They will be transmitted. They cannot be accessed though. Same site. This is very important. We will come to this when we reach CSRF attacks. And domains. You can be like, okay, bhai, this cookie I am setting it on app.100xdevs.com. If there is a request that goes out to /API/user from another website, let's say there is a website called randomwebsite.com. If from this website someone does an axios.get on app.100xdevs.com/API/user, don't send the cookie. This cookie is not for randomwebsite.com. So any website other than some specific websites, for example, you might have, we have harkia.classics.co.in and app.100xdevs.com. We can whitelist कि भाई only these two domains should send back this cookie to, let's say, API.100xdevs.com. So we can whitelist कि भाई this is your backend server, let's say Express server, and we can say, bhai, you sent me the sign-in request. Thank you. I am sending you back a cookie. So api.100xdevs.com. Forget Next.js for now. Simple React plus Express server. And I send back a set cookie header with the domains set to app.100x. Assume app.100xdevs.com is a React website. 100xdevs.com and harkirat.classics.co.in. Now, if either app.100xdevs.com sends a request to this backend server, it will send the cookie by default, whatever cookie was, set over here. This website was app.handxdevs.com. But even if someone sends a request from harkirat.classx.co.in to the same server, here also cookie will be sent. So this is useful when, can you guess? This is useful if you want कि भाई person logs in from one website, gets logged into every website. Harkirat, why don't you do this then? Harkirat.classx.co.in and app.handxdevs.com have different authentication. I had to log in both the places. Why don't you do this, Harkirat, if this is possible? It's because I don't own the code base of this. If I did, I would have done it. But we can totally be like, कि भाई, wherever the cookie is set here, then projects.handxdevs.com, you automatically get signed in. Don't try this. This will be very hard because the backend here is Next.js. So, this will have to access the Next.js backend for here. Very troublesome. They have different backends. Won't work basically. But if multiple applications do have the same Express server, you can be like, bhai, these two domains pe allow the cookie to go, no other domain pe allow the cookie to go. Why, Harkirat? Why can't I say allow this cookie to go on all domains? Here is where same site and CSRF attacks come into the picture. Let's quickly revise and then we will reach CSRF attacks and understand why are they bad. What is a common, you could have thought of a very common vulnerability in an architecture like this. Try to think from first principles. If you think about it, something might hit your head. This seems very insecure. Let's try to build onto that. But before that, let me do a quick revision. What are the properties of cookies? They are persistent. There are two types, persistent and session. And you can tell the cookie, bro, you will only go over HTTP or HTTPS. They can be HTTP only, which means cannot be accessed by scripts, are only used for transmission. They can be three types. You can set same site to be three types, either strict, lax, or none. We'll get to what these are very soon. And then domains. You can restrict, okay, bhai, the request is coming from these domains, send the cookie. If not, don't send the cookie. Assuming we don't know this right now, forget same site, forget even domains for now. From first principles, let's try to arrive at CSRF attacks. Of course, cookies were initially introduced. No one thought of these. Eventually, people realized this is a vulnerability and it became, CSRF attacks. Someone coined the term. But when cookies were first introduced, this happened. This is my very good website, app.handxdevs.com, written in React. Let's say, I know it's not written in React, but assume for now. This is my simple server, Express server, written in Node.js. And I'm using cookies for authentication. User says, I want to sign in. User gets back a cookie. Now, every request that goes to api.100xdevs.com has the cookie by default. It has the cookie attached to it. Browser ki property, it's the property of a browser. Okay, if you get back a set cookie header from the server, you send the cookie in every subsequent request. Now you are malicious user. You have your own website, call it learncoding.com, okay? And you are my competitor. So what do? You say, bro, come, you tell other people, please come to my website, learncoding.com. People are like, okay, let me visit this website, let's see what it is. People go here and as soon as the user comes here, you send an axios.post to this Express server. You send an axios.post that, does something like this, /user/name, set it to Ravan, or, bad person, or, poop. You update learncoding.com, sends the request to the Express server on api.100xdevs.com/user/name that lets you update the name and sets the user's name as poop. Why is this problematic? The user did not initiate this update. The user didn't go here to an update page and said, bro, I'm going to update my name to poop and send the request to the backend. A malicious user, a malicious website send the request, and since cookies are sent by default, in every request that's going here, this user was able to update without even taking consent from users from my website, sent a few post requests and updated their information on my server. This might not seem like a big thing to you, but what if this is a bank server? What if this is a HDFC bank server? Then you can send a request to hdfc.com/transfer money to whatever the other account number, malicious user account. Since the cookies are getting attached by default to every request, you can do cross site request forgery. You can do CSRF attacks. Cross site, this isn't my website. app.100xdevs is my website. HDFC bank server, API.100xdevs.com is my server. A different site, learncoding.com, is sending cross-site requests, forging कि भाई API.100xdevs.com, please update the name, or bank, please transfer. This is why whenever you are setting cookies, you need to be very strict. You need to restrict domains. You need to use the same site attribute. If you don't use the same site attribute, what will happen? If you don't use the same site attribute, we'll get to what same site is when we reach there maybe. But yeah, this basically represents how strictly you want to send the cookie. Do you want to send it on similar websites or not? It has 3 types, right? We'll get to it. But do you understand CSRF attacks? Okay, by cookies is very problematic. Anytime you send a request to API.100xdevs.com, cookie goes along unless you set some very strict permissions, and hence cross-site, a different site, can forge the request to the backend server because cookies are getting attached. So API.100xdevs.com feels that this request is coming to update their name to poop. Let me update it, or to transfer, so it transfers it. This is what CSRF attacks are. Let's look at how you can fix them. Cross-site request forgery attacks were super common because of cookies, and hence this same site attribute was introduced. Harkirat, what is the same site? You don't need it. Just set domains to app.100x or even star.100xdevs.com and you're good to go. You don't need same site. What is same site? Sort of. This might sound like a great idea. It is not. When we reach lakhs, you'll understand why not. But if you're thinking, just restrict the domains and you're good to go. True, but not really true. We'll see why. Let's see what this same site is. Whenever you get the sign-in request and you're sending back the cookie, you can say along with the cookie, bhai, same site is either none or strict or lax. It's one of these things. If you don't set anything, lax is chosen by default. Lax is probably what you want most of the times. But same site, whenever the sign-in request comes, server can send back ke bhai, same site is none, strict or lax. Can you guess what these mean? None basically means, bro, allow it from anywhere, which means CSRF attacks will persist, which means you should never use none unless it's for some random cookie. If it's for authentication cookies, you shouldn't. So if you send back same site as none, this CSRF attack can happen because you did not say same site is strict. You said same site, no. Any site is fine, which is why learncoding.com is also able to attach the cookie by default. The browser doesn't restrict the cookie on a different website because same site is set to none. But if you set it to strict, this is the complete opposite. Okay, by strictly, the website needs to be 100xdevs.com, app.100xdevs.com, API.100xdevs.com, app2.100xdevs.com, it's fine. Same site, not same domain, same site. As long as it's on .100xdevs.com, you're good, and the cookie will be sent. So the same cookie can now be sent from app.100xdevs.com, and the same cookie can be sent from whatever, projects.100xdevs.com. So none is great, strict is great. If you set the cookie as strict, then all of my websites will be able to, I log in once and everywhere cookie is being sent, and it's not being sent from learncoding.com. So this seems great. Strict is probably the way to go. Or is it? There is one problem with strict. None and strict were good enough. There was no need for this third type called lax. But there is one problem with strict. Let me share what that problem is. If you understand this, beautiful. It means you understood something that took me years to understand. I tried to understand. I knew you use same site lags. I never understood what it was. Took me a long time to figure out. Acha, this is why you need it. Let's kick things off with same site none. If you set same site as none, then a request goes out here to api@100xweb.com. You get back the response. But if a malicious website sends the request, the cookie goes here as well. So the cookie goes from both the places. You should never set same site as none. If you don't set anything, by default also, lax gets selected, the third one. But if you are explicitly setting it, unless it's a very, a cookie that doesn't matter to you, it's like the user's theme preferences, dark mode, light mode, then it's fine, even if other websites are able to see that. But authentication cookies, you probably don't want to send. Same site none, CServ attacks will happen, which is why you should not use them. Same site strict, the good thing is, okay, bhai, cookie goes from here, cookie does not go from here. CServ attacks are prevented. But there is a downside to this. Try to understand this carefully. This is a little hard to understand. Let's say I have an affiliate partner. I have a website called reactgoodcourses.com that has a button that says see Harkirat's course. And when you click on this button, Harkirat's course opens or app.100xsteps.com opens. If I set same site to strict, I repeat, if I set it to strict, which means bhai needs to come from .100xsteps.com, cannot come from some other website, cookie will not go. If I set it to strict, and if React Good Courses is linking to me, what happens when the user clicks on this button? The user comes here, user is like, okay, let me click on this button, see what happens. The request goes out to not api.100xsteps.com, but the front end code, app.100xsteps.com. And that front end code is like, bro, request came from reactgoodcourses.com. And hence the cookie doesn't go out. Nahi samajh aaya na? Little bad, not the best explanation. Before we explain this, actually to explain something else. If cookies are not just used in backend websites, in Next.js websites, they are sent in both front-end requests and backend requests. I repeat, if this is a Next.js website, and this is your browser, if you're sending a request to the front end, which means app.100xsteps.com, not api.100xsteps.com, app.100xsteps.com, you want the cookie to go along, right? That because this is a Next.js server, it will find who the user is, get their purchases, and return them the pre-rendered page with their purchases. Pre-rendered page with purchases basically means if I open app.100xsteps.com, the first request that's going out, the front-end request that's going out, is going out. Here you go. Is going out with the cookie. If you look at the request headers, the cookie is going along. This is my next auth session token, as you can see. Even in the first request. Why? Because the server needs to know what the purchases of Harkirat are. So the server gets my identification from the cookies, hits the database, gets back, Harkirat has purchased these 3-4 courses. Response gets pre-rendered here and returned to the user. So whenever I am visiting app.100xsteps.com, I want that the cookie is attached. But if when I had logged in, when I had sign in and I had said same site to strict, if same site was set as strict when the cookie was returned, then if I am on a random website, let's say you're on, learncodingfree.com, and this, Nginx fix. This page, let's say, yahan pe wrote, okay, bro, check out Harkirat's course. Assume this said, check out Harkirat's course at, yahan pe it said harkirat.classx.co.in, or it said app.100xsteps.com. When people come to this website and look at, oh, okay, these are free courses, and then they click here on app.100xsteps.com. Let me check that out. They click here. Where does this request to app.100xsteps.com go out to? This first request that went out from this page I click on it again, the first request that went out, what was the referrer of that request? If you look at it, request headers, nginx.com. Cannot see the referrer very well, but you get the idea, right? This request went out from learncoding.com. This learncodingfree.com, when I click here, I did not go to nginx.com in my browser. I did not do this. I clicked on it on a different website. And if same site is set to none, set to strict, then this request that went out to nginx.com will feel like, oh bro, this request is coming from learncodingfree.com, and hence it will not send the cookie. The cookie to nginx.com will not go because it will feel like, acha, this request is coming from learncodingfree.com. So I will not send the cookie. If I go to app.nginx.com from here, the cookie will not be sent, and hence the server will show me the login page. I am already logged in on app.nginx.com. I should see my courses. But if I get navigated from a third-party website, if I get navigated from this third-party website, learncodingfree.com, the first request won't send my cookie, and because same site was strict, and I'll see the landing page. This is what's called top-level navigation. If you look at it, I said lax only get requests and on top-level navigation. Top-level navigation means a different website pointed to you or had a button to reach your website, and you should allow cookies to be sent on those requests. Okay, if there is a get request that is coming from top-level navigation from a different page, allow the cookie to go through. That is what lax means. It's between strict and none. None means कि भाई allow it from everywhere, doesn't matter. CSRF attacks will happen. Strict means only allow it from app.100xsteps.com or app2.100xsteps.com. Lax means don't allow it from everywhere. But if a different website is doing top level navigation, send the cookie, it's fine. It means they're sending traffic our way. So the first request that's going out, even if it's from a different website, it's fine, send the cookie so that the user reaches this page and sees their courses and doesn't reach this page and sees a landing page. This is what same site lax means. Again, I didn't know this for the longest time, and I just used to use same site as lax, or did not send same site, and by default browsers select lax. But that's what lax means. It means it is strict, but if a get request is coming from a different page, learncodingfree.com, or even from maliciouswebsite.com, as long as it's a top level navigation to our page, it's fine. We will allow the cookie, even if it's from a malicious website, as long as they're not sending a post request to change the data from their website, it's fine. If they're sending people our way, we'll send the cookie, even if it's from a malicious website. So the problem is this: React good courses, if someone comes and clicks on my website, the cookie doesn't go and I reach the landing page, the sign up page, even though I'm logged in. And if you set same site as lax, if it's a top level navigation and a get request to whatever, in this case app.100xsteps.com, cookies will go through, which is why same site lax is the most important, most relevant attribute, or you want to set same site as lax. If you don't set same site, browsers assume it to be lax. Some cases you might need strict, some cases you might need none as well. Cool. Hopefully that's clear. Took me a long time to understand. All right, let's get into the code base. It's fairly straightforward. Rather than sending back a token and explicitly setting it in local storage, you send back a set cookie header and the browser takes care of sending it back. That's pretty much it. So if you look at the code, it'll be fairly straightforward. You still need JWTs, I repeat. We still need some sort of a verifiable token that's on the browser that's being sent back to the server. Only how it's being sent is a little different. Earlier it was being sent in an authorization header and it was being set explicitly in requests. Now it will be coming in inside a cookie, but in the end you'll get a token that you need to verify, and based on that you will be able to get the identity of the user. So don't feel like if you're using cookies you don't need JWTs. You still need some way to encrypt tokens and decode them. JWTs are one way. You can use a different way to encode tokens and verify them later on as well. All right. With that context, let's quickly initialize a basic React application. There are a few steps here, and a few libraries that you need. The final code is already here, so we can actually go through the final code. We can write it from scratch. It's less than 100 lines of code, so you can actually go through it as well. If you want to write it yourself, you can. First, go through this video, see the changes, how it's different from local storage, and then maybe try to code it. All the steps are here. Let me clone this repository, which has all the code for slide 6, 7, and 8. The first slide is the backend code, the second slide is the front-end code, and the third slide is what if you don't have React and you have to serve the front-end from Express as well. But we'll get there when we get there. Let's kick things off by cloning the repository. Let me take you guys through the code. Git clone week 16 auth 1, and let me open it in Visual Studio Code as well. Week 16 auth 1, there we go. That's Visual Studio Code. There is some backend code, there is some front-end code. Let's go over both of them one by one. Simple single index.html file. Ignore index.html for now. Sorry, single index.ts file. Ignore this one for a while. See a bunch of red squigglies. That's because I haven't run npm install in the backend folder. Let me do that. But it's a single index.ts file, less than 50 lines of code. Should be fairly straightforward to understand. I import Express as our HTTP server. I import one new library called Cookie Parser. Harkirat, this is a new one. Yes. What does it do, Harkirat? Well, what does the name suggest? It says Cookie Parser. It is a middleware that lets you parse cookies given a request. Harkirat, can I not do rec.headers.cookie and rec.headers of cookie and get the cookies? You can, but you get a very long string. Then you have to parse that string and get an object. Cookie Parser, as the name suggests, parses that very long cookie string and gets you an object. Harkirat, very long cookie string? Yes, there is not a single thing you can set on a cookie. If I go to app.hydexdevs.com, you will notice the cookie that goes out in the first request doesn't have just the token. If you look at request headers, if you look at the cookie, it says, bro, Google Analytics, this is your cookie, semicolon, Next.js auth session, this is the token, and then a bunch of other cookies. It's a very long string separated by semicolons. So if you don't use Cookie Parser, you will have to, get this very long string and then parse the string to get back your specific token that you're looking for. So you don't need Cookie Parser, but it will make your life easier if you use it over here as a middleware. It'll give you an easier way to access and set cookies, which is why Cookie Parser is a library we're using. Of course, done it many times. It's being used a different way, but we'll see why that is and why we have to add these extra arguments here. Until now, we've used course like this. But now today I'm saying, nahi bro, course needs to have these two arguments. We'll see why that is. JWT and a type called JWT payload. You don't need it if you feel TypeScript is too difficult. Just remove it. And wherever we were using JWT payload, just type any and that's fine. But slowly start to get a little more comfortable with types. And lastly, path, a library that lets you concatenate paths. We'll see later on what that is. A secret when you're signing a JWT and verifying it. Initialize Express. Add the Cookie Parser middleware. Add the express.json middleware. And add course. But something new with it. Credentials true origin localhost 5173. In Express, if you are using course, if you are allowing cross origin requests, you need to, and if you want cookies to be set, you need to pass credentials as true and you need to give an origin. I don't even know if there is a way to have multiple origins here. I think, and I could be wrong, and if it is wrong, in the comments let me know. Okay, you cannot have multiple front ends from which this cookie can be set if you're using course in Express. Could I be wrong? Yes, but I think this cannot be an array. This can only be a string, which means there is a single front end that is allowed to set the cookie on this specific backend server, which is why you'll a lot of times see, auth.facebook.com. If you go to facebook.com and click on login, it takes you here and then you log in. If you might go to, topcoder.com, which has, let's say, 10 different websites. If you log into any one of them, it will take you to auth.topcoder.com. If you go to, I definitely know we did this in STS Labs. Let's go to stslabs.co. And this is a website back in, it's down, IIT Roorkee. If I open one of these applications and click on the sign up button, let's see where that is. Probably has sign up. Backdoor probably has sign up. Only accessible inside the campus study portal. Campus only Urdush. If I go to this website and click on sign up login, it takes me to stslabs.us.auth.com. It takes me to a different website that does authentication. So usually you will have, your auth.xyz.com, auth.nextsteps.com, where the user will do authentication and the cookie will be set. In my case, my front end will be running on a React application, which is why I say, course, and specifically allow this origin with the credentials, allow the server to be able to set cookies on this specific origin. That's how this thing changes. Okay, what happens if I do this? The cookie won't be set, you won't be able to do authentication. We'll see later on how we can fix this when we reach the third slide over here, or the last slide over here, called front end from Express. But we'll reach there when we reach there. Cookies become very difficult cross origin. If your backend is on a different place, front end is on a different place, you have to do things like these. A post request on sign in, sign up I haven't put because it's a dummy request right now. Whenever a user comes to sign in, you get their email and password. You generate a token. Of course, you'll hit the database here, check if the user credentials are right, get back an ID, and then set the ID over here or user ID over here, sign a token, and then return that token to the user. In the previous approach, in the local storage approach. In this approach, you simply call res.cookie, the name of your token, or whatever you want to name it, and the actual token, and then you can send back the user whatever you want. This function, what do you think this will do? Will put the cookie in the set cookie header. Calling this function, thanks to us having the cookie parser middleware, just calling this will return the user a header, this set cookie header. What happened when I went to app.nextsteps.com and clicked on login, if you remember? When I was doing login over here, I was getting back a set cookie header over here, right? If you look at the response headers, it says set cookie, secure next dash auth callback to this, and set cookie auth session token equal to this. So in their case, they have named it this. In my case, I have named the cookie just token. Can I write secure next? Yeah, you can. But I just named it simply token. So when the user signs in on my website, they will receive a similar set cookie header back, which will have, the JWT I created for them. That will automatically reach this cookie section. They don't have to do a local storage.set. That's the benefit of doing this, right? That's the whole benefit of using cookies over local storage. This becomes problematic when you reach mobile apps. Mobile apps don't do this by default. Okay, you get a cookie, you put it somewhere. This is only for browsers, basically. Cookies are, a use case for browsers, not for other ways like mobile apps. Cool. That's how you set a cookie. Question is, how do you get a cookie? If it's coming in every subsequent request, let's say this is a /user endpoint, which a request came. As I said, the user doesn't need to explicitly set it. The user doesn't need to do this. It will come by default. When it's coming by default, how do you fetch it? How did we fetch the authorization header? We did a rec dot headers of authorization, right? We usually do this in the middleware. I'm just doing it here, but eventually this should be done in the middleware. Similarly, this is how you get a token, a cookie. If you want to access the token cookie, you can do a rec.cookies of token. How does this happen? Again, the cookie parser middleware that we're using gives you a simple rec.cookies object that you can use. If you were not using cookie parsers, you would have had to do this. Rec.headers of cookie, and then parse this cookie string, and then parse the cookie string, and then eventually extract the token. Since we're using the middleware, we can simply do const token equal to rec.cookies.token, and then the similar JWT verification, and if everything is right, then return the user decoded.id, maybe hit the database, get the user's email, their first name, and return it to them. That's what this endpoint is supposed to do, right? This is the endpoint that the user will hit when they're on their profile page, when they're trying to get their email email, first name, last name, profile picture. And this is how we've done authentication. We have gotten the token from the cookies now and decoded it versus getting it from the authorization header. And lastly, what does logout do? It sets this is not great. It can set the cookie to slash or nothing, or you can call rest.clear cookie, which will clear the token cookie, which is the same as doing rest.set the cookie token to an empty string. Both of them work. These will remove the cookie, basically send back a set cookie header with an empty string. Okay, please set token to this, and then return to the user that you are logged out. That's all for the backend. These are all the endpoints that you need. A sign-in endpoint. We're not doing any validations. We're not hitting the database. Eventually we will in a real app. And then sign the token and then set it in the cookie. Harkirat, why separately? Why not rest.send the cookie token, token? Why did you do this above in one line and then separately here? The answer is you're just putting it in the response headers, right? This will pretty much do something like this: rest.headers.set set dash cookie, and append something to it, so on and so forth. So you need to do this multiple times. You need to attend, you might have to add 10 different cookies, right? Which is why you don't have to necessarily do it at the very end or call a send cookie. You can add multiple cookies. You do whatever you want to add. Eventually you send similar, either a text or a JSON, depending on your application. That's the backend. Here there is another endpoint, / ignore for now. This is for when we reach front end getting served from the Express server. We haven't reached there yet. This is for when we have to get rid of these. The only new / interesting things to learn are: number one, if your front end and back end are different, you need to set credentials to true. Okay, bhai, please allow credentials to be set from this website or cookies to be set from this website. And the second thing to learn is how to set a cookie for a user. Third thing to learn is how to get a cookie from the user. This is the backend part. Let's look at the front end part. Let's try to run it actually first. npm run start. Let me also charge my laptop here. Does not work because I haven't built it. So npm run build. Followed by npm run start. And now if I go to Postman and send a request to, /user with some body, this looks wrong. Needs to be JSON raw, JSON body, username. Doesn't matter, we're not using this particular. Let me put something random. Password, random. So I have a post request that I'm sending to /signup. How do I close this? Cannot. Post request that I'm sending to /user, don't need /signup, which will, sign in, which will hit this specific endpoint, this /sign in endpoint. We're going to ignore email and password, which is why it doesn't matter if I send it or not, but here, let me send it. Token will get generated, but token is not what's being sent back. Earlier we used to do this, rest.json, token, and then the JWT would be here, right? Now we are doing, set it on the cookie, return whatever text to the user. If I send this request, let's inspect the response. It says logged in, and if I go to, make this bigger. If I go to headers over here, you will see a set cookie header came back. It says, bro, token equal to this needs to be set on you. And if I look at the cookies thing over here, there's a button over here called cookies. If I click on it, it says, bro, token as a cookie has been set. Postman tries to behave like a browser. Okay, bhai, theek hai. Set cookie thing came back from the headers. If I send this request again, it says, bro, set cookie came back with token equal to something. I am putting it here in my cookies just like a browser would if it would receive the request. Does React Native do the same thing? No. Over there, if a set cookie comes back, it ignores. Cookies are a browser concept. Postman is thankfully mimicking a browser. Okay, if cookies came back, a set cookie header came back, I am going to put it here explicitly. You can remove it if you want. For example, token 2 is present here, let me remove it. But whatever set cookie header comes back, it gets set here. Now, if I go to /user with a get request, what do you think will happen? The response that I get back is user ID 1. Basically means control reached here, and if I log the token, you will see the token is present over here, and I decoded the thing and sent back the user. Okay, this is your ID. Let's try one thing. Let's make this token 5 and then restart the server. Going to rebuild it and send this request one more time. Not this one, the post request, the sign in request. I send the sign in request, it says logged in. What do I get back in the headers now? I get back 2 set cookies, one for token 5. If I look at the cookies over here, it has token 5. So Postman is caching your cookies just like a browser would. And if I send back a request to /sign in, it is, /user, it's sending back those cookies. It's also sending back token 5 now. What happens when I send a request back to /logout? What did logout do? It cleared the token cookie, or set it as one of these work. You don't need both the lines. And if I send this, what do the headers have? Set cookie token equal to empty. It says by token ko empty kar do. Clear the cookie for the user, clear the token for the user. If I look at cookies now, token 5 is empty, which is why similar to the user being logged out, right? Similar to you deleting it from the local storage. Only in this case, it needs to happen from the server. The server needs to respond back with set cookie equal to empty string. And that's how you would do the backend of this. Now comes the front end part. How can I write the front end for this application? Can you think of, what that might be? Nothing changes. Only thing is you're not explicitly setting thing in local storage. Cookies are taking care of sending tokens and receiving tokens. You don't have to worry about them. If I go to frontend /source/app.tsx, let me keep the backend on. Let me open another tab. Let me go to frontend and run npm install. Let's look at the frontend code. It has a bunch of routes. Specifically, my /signup should go to this page. We don't have a signup route, so feel free to ignore this. We only have sign in page and the users page. What does the sign in page do? It has an input box that sets the username, an input box that sets the password, and a button that sends a request to /signin with these username and passwords and with the credentials true. Harkirat, you said that you don't have to explicitly send any headers like this, authorization bearer space local storage.get item token. You said this, Harkirat, this will make our life very easy. Yet, you are adding something here called with credentials true. Why? Because this is cross-site. If there is front-end and back-end that are on different domains, you need to explicitly have with the credentials true here, else it will not send the cookie. You need to have credentials true and origin this thing over here, else it will not send the set cookie header. Can you get rid of this? Yes. If the front-end and back-end are hosted on the same website, then you don't need any of this. But right now that's not the case, which is why the only difference that you'll see here is that whenever you're sending a request, it goes with the credentials true, and that's it. That's the sign-in page. User page is initialize an empty user data object. When the component mounts for the first time, send a request to /user, a get request with credentials true. Whatever data you get back, set in the state variable, and then render it over here. That's how There's some type error you can fix very easily, like add a type over here. User data type, you get the idea. And then you render the user's ID over here. When the user clicks on the logout button, you send a post request to /logout, again with credentials true. Let's try to run this application. So if I go to the front end, I see username, password. I'm sorry for light mode. It's burning my eyes as well. If I click on submit, it says you are logged in. It sends a request which gets back a header that says set cookie token equal to something. If I go to application /cookies localhost colon 3000, it says token equal to this. This should probably be here on localhost colon. Oh, I went to localhost 3000. My bad. Stop. Pause. This is not where you will go. You will go to 5173, where your front end is hosted. Harkirat, how is the backend returning front end? We'll get to that later on. For now, go to the front end code, which is localhost colon 5173. Don't go to the backend endpoint, which is localhost colon 3000. Make sure you're running both front end and backend locally. /sign in, and you will see a sign in form in the React website. Again, that was, ignore what I did before. Click on submit. You get back sign in. If you look at the headers over here, the response headers specifically, it says set cookie /sign in. Oh, is the backend down? Localhost 3000 /sign in. You are logged in. If I look at the request one more time, where is the set header? Response headers, credential. 5173 is here. If I go back to index.ts, localhost colon 5173 is here. Let me restart the backend. I feel like I removed this in the middle, and when I did, I've restarted the application since then. So let's see. I've saved it. npm run build, npm run start. Send it one more time. It says you are logged in. If I go here, look at the response headers. Does not have set cookie. Now I will debug unless I'm missing something very obvious here. Let's go to signin.tsx /signin username password with credentials true. This doesn't work, right? If I go to /user, still says ID is 1. Let me clear the cookie. You are logged in. There you go. Okay, makes sense. I had already set that specific cookie for that specific user and the front end. That's why it's happened. How can you fix it if you're seeing the same thing? You can clear the cookie, but you should remember the cookie is set on the backend code. So go to any backend endpoint, doesn't matter which one. Click on inspect, go to application, and you can clear the cookie from here. For example, just remove this cookie, or you can click the logout button here as well. Pretty much does the same thing on the backend's /route, but we'll get there. What have I done now? I removed the cookie again. So if I go here and press submit, you will see it says, bro, set cookie to this specific token, and the browser will store that cookie. If I go to localhost colon 3000 / any random backend endpoint, if I look at the cookies on this specific website, application, you will see token came back here. Token 5 is also coming back, which is why you see token 5 here as well, but you see token over here. You remember in the backend I added token 5, right? If I go to Studio Code, if I go to index.ts, I added token 5 here as well, which is why it's being set as well, but token is being set. If I go to /user now, it says your ID is 1. Why? Because the request that's going out to /user has, if you look at the request headers, has the cookie which sends the token along. It sends token 5 also because I said that, but it sends the token also, which is why the backend is able to decode this token. As you can see, I'm logging it as well. Then you return the user their specific credentials. If I click on logout, what happens? If I click on logout, I get back from the server let me try that one more time. As you saw, if I logged out, the ID goes away. But let me go back to /signin, randomly login. The login sign-in request gets back a set cookie. If I go to headers, response, headers. Oh, I was looking at the options request. Makes sense. It says set cookie equal to this. That might be what I was doing earlier as well. I was looking, so there are two sign-in requests that go out. One is this pre-flight request, which will not have the set header cookie. The other one will. It's probably what I was looking at before as well. Set cookie, token and token 5. If I go to /user and click on logout, again the main request that goes out will have a set cookie empty. I did it twice, which is why you see it twice, but I just did both of these things. You can do just one and it will work. And now the user is logged out. If I refresh, you will see the ID is nothing. Why? Because the request is no longer sending out the cookie. I cleared the cookie when I clicked on logout. What does clearing a cookie mean? I sent back a set cookie equal to null, token equal to null, and then the browser forgot it. That's the front end. Backend and front end work in a React plus Express application. The only weird thing is, KR, why did I have to do this? And why did I have to do this? This is not weird. Like, this is something you have to do if you have cross origin front ends and backends. But what if front end and backend were in the same place? Similar to Next.js, do I still have to do this? Let's see. What I've done in the backend code is, so ignore the front end code for a while. In the backend code, I've added a index.html file, which if you look at it, it's a very similar file. It has a few input boxes, one for username, one for password. It has a button that lets you submit the username and password. It has a button that lets you log out. Some meta tags, ignore. A script that gets Axios. You can also use Axios in simple HTML, CSS and JavaScript. This is the place where that library is hosted to be used directly in a HTML, CSS, JavaScript project. This is what the Axios library minified looks like. It says if the user clicks on the login button, get the username and password, and then send a request to /signin and alert the user that you're logged in. Notice, I'm not doing local storage.set item because we're using cookies. Also notice, I'm not sending with credentials anymore because this front end and back end will be on the same domain name. Similarly, logout button sends a request to /logout. Again, don't need to clear the local storage, don't need to send with credentials equal to true. And lastly, when the user visits the website, I call the fetch user data endpoint, which sends a get request to /user. And if there is some data, displays it in the HTML DOM. If there is no data, it just logs something on the screen. Let's see how this website looks like. If I go to localhost:3000, add some username and password over here, click on inspect. Now localhost:3000 is the backend code. Harkirat, how is this index.html file being served from the backend code? If you look at index.ts and scroll to the very bottom, I say app.get/. Anytime a user comes to localhost:3000, send them the index.html file. Send them path.join __ dir name /source/index.html. Harkirat, this path looks weird. Yes, because the index.js file is here. So you have to do /source/index.html. Harkirat, can I put this here? Yeah, you can. There are a few ways you can do it. One thing you can do is anytime it is built, you can, copy over index.html over to /dist. You can do this. There are other ways to do it as well. You can copy it in the dist folder and then simply do this, or you can just fetch it from the source folder. Doesn't matter. This is how the front end is being returned from our backend application. In fact, if you might have heard of EJS, templating system pre-React days that will let you, your Express application do React like stuff, send dynamic things from the backend, but yeah, not used anymore. No need to understand it. Forget about it. If I click on submit, request goes out. Where does this request go out from, Harkirat? It goes out from this index.html file. If I go here, what happens when the user clicks on the submit button? Control reaches here. It does a axios.post/signin with the username and password and alerts you with you are logged in. If I refresh now, your ID is 1, which means the first request that's going out, fetch user data request, this request has the cookie. If I look at the headers over here, request headers, there you go, has a bunch of cookies, but it has my token as well, which is why you see ID equal to 1 here. If I log out, the server responds back with cookie equal to empty, and which is why if I refresh, the user authentication goes away. The thing to learn is I did not have to send with credentials true over in all these Axios requests. In fact, I also can remove this now. It can be a simple, I don't even need CORS because there is no cross origin request that's happening. I can keep some completely remove CORS because all the requests are happening from the same origin on which the backend is. Backend and frontend are hosted on the same endpoint, similar to Next.js. Now, someone will ask, Harkirat, if in Express you can do frontend and backend on the same endpoint, why do you need a Next.js? Good question. Because Next.js is React plus backend. This is non-React plus backend, which is I need Next.js. Okay, in case you had that question. Now, let me just show you that this does work. Let me build the backend again. And that's it. I only need to build the backend, right? I don't need to build the front end. And even with CORS completely removed, if I submit, it says you're logged in. If I refresh, it shows me my ID. If I log out and refresh, the ID goes away. That's how you do authentication using cookies. If this was interesting, then the next one will be boring because this will abstract away all of this and you will just do a bunch of function calls and have sign in with Google, sign in with GitHub, sign in with email, sign in with Facebook, whatever. And a bunch of very abstracted APIs. But under the hood, are cookies being used? Yes. Why, Harkirat? Why not local storage? As I mentioned before, if you're using Next.js, you cannot use local storage. Why, Harkirat? Go to the beginning of the class when I explained this. But that's why you need to use cookies. And you can write all this logic yourself raw in Next.js as well, like we did over here. You can set the cookies on the server, or you can use this library called NextAuth, which abstracts a bunch of these things and abstracts the login with Google stuff. We'll get to that in the next video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.